This is Rebel Mom Boss, the podcast for scrappy, rebellious moms who are making things happen while raising their babies. My name is Robyn Flynn, a scrappy, rebellious mom myself, and the founder and managing director of Robyn Flynn Media. I'm also a mom to a beautiful toddler named Peyton. We do things a little bit differently here, so buckle up and welcome to the rebellion. 60 podcast episodes. So without further ado, let's welcome Candace to Rebel Mom Boss. Hey, Candace, welcome to the rebellion.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be part of this and the message that you're creating here.
Yeah, I think there's this idea that you can be a mom, you can be a working mom, but I haven't seen a lot of representation for being an entrepreneurial mom. So I'm always excited when I see other moms who are kind of doing it and like taking names, which is awesome. So, you know, being a stay-at-home mom, though, you have experience being a stay-at-home mom, which, you know, if I look at my 1 year of maternity leave, that was the hardest job I've ever had in my entire life. So,
right.
You know, what was your experience like? You have 3 kids. I only have 1. I can barely handle her.
Yeah, it felt isolating, lonely. Maternity leave was like a time when, thank goodness, I found personal development during that time and started reading and listening to books, because it was a time where my husband got to go back to work and I was home, and it was like, I always wanted to be a mom. That was like the thing I knew in life. Like, I want to do that. But then it came and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so alone. This is not fun. I should be enjoying this. And then there's like, you beat yourself up because you're like, what you see online is like this beautiful glorification of it. And it's, you bounce back and you feel so amazing. And I wasn't feeling like that. And that's actually why I started my podcast in the first place, because I just felt like people weren't talking about what my experience was. And so I just wanted other moms to feel connected and seen. And so, yeah, it definitely wasn't a glamorous time, even though, yes, they're the loves of my life and it's all wonderful, but there's another side to it. It can be both. And it certainly was for me.
I always joke to my husband because every day I'll be exhausted and like looking forward to bedtime. I cannot wait for bedtime. And then the second my daughter goes to bed, I'm like watching videos and looking at pictures of her because I miss her so much.
Oh my gosh.
It's the most strange experience.
It is. It's like, how can I love you so much that I think my heart will burst open? And then also days that you are just on my last thinking nerve.
And it's a lot. Like when you're a mom, as much as, you know, men's roles as fathers has shifted a lot in the last even just 20 years, you know, we still do most of the child rearing in most cases. Yeah. And, you know, it's normal for, you know, your child to get hurt or not feel good. They want mommy. You know,
yes.
When it's time for dinner, mom knows what the kid likes to eat that week because it changes all the time.
Oh, literally.
Yeah, usually after you've bought something they love in bulk, that's when they decide they no longer like it.
Yes.
I have probably 1 million of those little fruit snack pouches in my house that she has decided, nope, don't like those anymore. So if you need them, hit me up. I'll ship them to you. But, you know, deciding to put yourself first as a mom sometimes I think is really brave still. In 2025, that's a little bit wild to say, but, you know, did you feel any guilt at all when you started your podcast about taking that time and space for yourself?
Definitely. It felt like, you know, one of my stories that I told myself was that I feel like I had an ideal childhood growing up. And so my mom stayed at home with us and she did everything. She's amazing, but like superstar mom status that I don't even have a desire to reach or do. And so I had to kind of like do that inner work, had some therapy, like unlearning a few things and saying, hey, that's a story that's not mine. And I don't need to keep that because it's holding me back from thriving as the mother that I am meant to be. So just kind of giving yourself permission was a big thing for me, and saying I don't have to do it like I think the ideal version was. Like, I get to create my own. So definitely. There was some guilt in that, and taking time for myself, or even accepting help. I don't know if you experienced that, but it was like, you know, good moms in my mind were like with their children all the time. But then when I finally, you know, let my parents watch the baby, or my husband's parents, and you got that hour or half a day to yourself and you came back, that's when you were like, whoa, I can show up so much better when I do take that time and I do allow that for myself than when I don't. You know, it was just a big realization of like, no, 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 we need this too, and we're allowed to have this.
I've been seeing this sort of engagement rage bait thread circulating, talking about like, you know, why would you still send your kid to daycare or childcare when you yourself have a day off? And I get so angry, but I don't respond because I know that's the purpose. But I get upset about that because you don't have a day off ever when you're a mom. You may have a day off from, you know, the job that pays the bills. But to me, if I have a day where I'm not working and my daughter has an opportunity to still she goes to a home daycare, so there are 9 kids total. She loves going there. They have so much fun. She's got all her friends and they have activities that they do. So for her routine, it makes sense for her to still go. And I can get things done around the house, you know, like laundry or scrubbing the bathtub, those jobs you never want to do, the things that are hard to do with a little person hanging off your ankle all day. So, you know, I'm curious how you view structuring your life, balancing everything, because sometimes it really feels like a game of Jenga, and you pull the wrong block out and just everything is going to fall over.
It does. And it's funny to me that those types of posts, we do not see them for the dads. Like it is only for the mothers. And nobody bats an eye at the dad that doesn't. And I don't want to bash men. Like my husband is great. I think he helps more than most men. He's a kindergarten teacher, so he's very good with the kids. But like you mentioned earlier, we still have the mental load. We have all of that. And I have definitely all of that in my household too. But the balance for me, yeah, it was a process. So I stayed home on maternity leave with my first one, of course, and then I had a second one less than a year later, and I learned what Irish twins are, I guess, and so they are less than 11 months apart in age, which I don't even know if that's physically possible, but apparently it is. We did it, and so then I kept both of them home on that maternity leave because that's what I thought I was supposed to do, and then I had the third one and was like, oh, no, no, no. We are going to daycare. The other 2 are going to daycare. I'm going to keep the baby home on maternity leave, obviously, but the other 2 are going to daycare twice a week because that was just something that I finally was okay with and, you know, just finally had the own confidence in myself as a mom. It took the third kid, but sometimes it takes us a while to get that message or learn that for ourselves. But it was so much better, so much more enjoyable to be home on maternity leave with that new baby, and the 2 big kids were so thrilled to go to daycare. See, we had an in-home one too, see their friends and have that routine. And so it was a benefit for everyone. But I think if you don't let yourself off the hook of like what you think you should be doing, then you make a lot of decisions. And then I found that that's when I was very resentful or crabby because I'm doing things that I know don't align with me and my own motherhood journey. We know we all have our own. And I think just allowing for that is the biggest difference that can help you. If you want all 3 home and it like lights your soul on fire, great. It wasn't like that for me. So just everyone's journey is different.
Yeah, that's such a great message because what works for one mom might not work for another. You know, for me, I had a year paid leave, which, you know, blessed be to the Canadian overlords, you know. Like,
oh my gosh.
Such phenomenal maternity leave. But that still didn't feel like enough for me. Like at the end of my year, I chose not to go back to my full-time job of over 10 years because I needed to be home with my daughter. That was just what I needed in that moment. And I know for some people it was like, what are you talking about? I couldn't wait to go back to work. I'm like, but that was your journey and this is my journey. That's totally okay. But what I quickly realized is that my family enjoys having a roof over our heads and we like eating. So I needed to figure out a way to still bring income in. I am the primary breadwinner in my family. So, you know, suddenly quitting my job was very scary. And that was when I started my business. I know you kind of had a similar shift. You were a teacher for over 10 years. We have a very similar story. And then you started your own business. You know, I always say moms are the best people to start businesses because we're organized, we are driven to succeed, and we know how to get things done. So I'm curious what it was like for you to shift from, you know, I don't want to say a comfortable job, but having done something for a long time to then being in business for yourself. How scary was that?
Very. And it started slow for me. I like to share this part because I think in our social media driven world, it's just like, oh, we blink and things happen. Nope. It was like 3 years for me. So I think when I was teaching, I liked it. I didn't hate going. I never dreaded going, but then I had my own kids and I realized coming home and having to crash, take a nap, need like extreme amounts of alone time wasn't what every other teacher was experiencing. And I know that because my husband's a teacher too, and he didn't need that. So there was a lot of like, I felt so strange and like, what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? And then it's just learning more about yourself. But so I started grasping at straws of like, I need an out. But I'm a teacher, and so you can Google, like I'm sure you can do this with lots of jobs, like you Google what can I do with this degree, and it's like nothing. Like you can do the job that you were currently doing. And so it was like I don't know what else to do. So I was grasping at straws. I also was, postpartum, had gained like 50 pounds every pregnancy, and so I joined a wellness network marketing community. And that was my like gateway into entrepreneurship. That was luckily a great experience, a great community. I'm not affiliated with that anymore, but stretched my comfort zone. It had me, it was the time period that I started my own podcast. It was the time period that I started posting on social media and just like really pushing myself to get out there. And, I thought I was shy and boring and all the things. So that's kind of what it looked like for me. And so it was 3 years really of the thought of, I need out. I need to do something different. No, brush it away. Nope, it came back. I came back and finally having that hard conversation with my spouse. And it was really right after the pandemic, because it kind of forced us to slow down. And we were like, whoa, we kind of like that. And life had been going so fast, it felt like, and we're blinking and the kids are getting older. And we're like, wow, we're like, this is going to be the favorite time of our lives, or we think it is. And we're missing it. It feels like, and we're rushing through it every single day. And so that initial year was a leave request that my school did grant. And it was for me to stay home with our youngest because she wasn't in school yet. And this was like the last year that we could kind of do that. So that's where that decision kind of fell. And then in my mind, it was like, we're going to figure this out because I don't want to go back. This is what I want. So there were a lot of pivots, lots of changes, but that's kind of how we fell into that.
Oh, I love that. It can be really scary too, because, I sort of alluded to the fact that like we have responsibilities as adults and parents. We need to feed our children, right? They get used to eating. So, were there ever any moments in your journey where you were like, did I make a mistake? Did I make the right choice here? How am I going to pay the mortgage this month? Like, did you ever have those sort of scary moments?
Definitely. Finance-wise, we had a pretty good amount saved. We had pretty much gotten rid of all of our bills besides our house payment, that kind of thing. So we were lucky enough that was set up and that was in place. So there was like this buffer of like, we can try this out and see what happens. But for sure, there's those times where like, oh, we need a new water heater. Oh, shoot. Like just life things where you're like, oh, geez. Luckily enough, though, I mean, I've always fallen back on like, if I needed to, I could go back to teaching. There's a shortage. They need substitutes all the time. So, occasionally I will go up and sub at school just because I like to see my former, colleagues and things. And then it also just, can sometimes bridge that gap of finances if you need that. Like you said, you have responsibilities, but it's okay, I think, to do that or have that combination of things. Even though because a lot of times like you're still growing and I am still in a place of growth and booking clients and doing that. So it's okay to kind of have that bridge. We don't have to be all in here or all out there. I think we get that misconception of like you're in or you're out, but really you can make a lot of things work. Like you said before, we're moms, we can figure a lot of things out, and just trusting that you'll figure it out for your family is, sometimes the faith you need to have in entrepreneurship.
I've noticed a shift in women's confidence overall. So in my previous life, I was a radio producer. So I was chasing and booking guests every day, anywhere from, 8 to 12 people every day on a variety of topics, news stories, whatever. And I always found it was harder to book women to agree to be guests on the show because they always undervalued their own experience and their own expertise. Even if they had masters, PhDs, had been published, they were like, oh, I don't think I'm the right person to talk about this. Whereas I never had an issue booking men for interviews. If they were available, it was a yes, you know? So it always required a lot of effort to make sure that there was at least, you know, an attempt at some sort of gender parity and getting, you know, BIPOC voices on the air. It was a lot of work to make sure that that happened. And then as I've shifted into the podcast space, and that is more recent, I'm noticing more women are throwing their hat in the ring and saying, no, I want to talk about this. And I know this is something that you help other people with, is encouraging them to be guests on podcasts and convincing them that, you know, their voice matters and you have a story to share. So I'm curious what that has been like for you. Have you noticed that women are maybe a little bit more reticent to share their own story and experience?
Absolutely. I did the same thing. I was probably 75 plus episodes into podcasting and my own show before I actually would say, you know, that question people ask you, well, what is it that you do? I was a year out of the classroom and I was still saying I used to teach. So I always tell people now, it's this identity shift and we cannot keep referring to ourselves in the past tense. It's easier. It's more comfortable. Take that uncomfortable step and start saying either what you currently are or what you want to be. So I'm a podcast producer, host, and mentor. When I first started saying that, it didn't feel good in my body. It felt like, who are you to say this? And again, I'm 70 episodes in at this time. Like, this is wild when you look back on it, that we put these, I think, like bars of expectation of like, oh, you have to hit this mark. You have to have this many clients. You have to have made this much money before you get to say that. And it's like, no, you publish one podcast episode, you get to say you're a podcaster. You write a page, you get to say you're a writer. You run around the block, you get to say you're a runner. As women, we get to just be that. And we get to say that. A man would. So we also have that chance. And I am so passionate about podcasting because I just don't think that enough of us have a voice. And when we give more of us a voice, women, especially mothers, especially, then we allow for more people to feel seen. And once you feel that, when you listen to something or hear something where you're like, whoa, she gets me, like, you want more of it. And that's the part that I love, because when you feel seen, that's when you feel the confidence. That's when you feel I can do this too. And I just really want that for all of us.
What kind of example do you feel you're setting for your children? Because, you know, I struggle with wanting to balance life and work with my child so that, you know, she can actually see her mother and that I'm not always stuck in my office all day. But I also think it's important for her to see that women can run their own businesses, that women can be moms and entrepreneurs. So I feel like I'm setting a good example, but then I feel guilty that I'm not spending enough time with her. And I'm like, well, I quit my job to spend more time with her, and now I'm working more hours than I was before. Do you ever experience that? I don't know how to phrase this question, but you know, that delicate balance between wanting to set a good example for your children and the added pressure that puts on you.
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying and what you're feeling. Absolutely. Every day, every week, you have to be doing mindset work if you aren't and you're on entrepreneurship, because it's too easy to slip and just not catch yourself for a long time. So do work on your mindset. But it's that in the beginning for me, my kids were exactly why I left the classroom, exactly why I started my podcast. I can literally remember the first day that I hit record on my first episode. My youngest was a baby and I was on maternity leave with her, but school was going to be starting back up and I was going back in like a month. And I had wanted to start a podcast for a year at this point. And I thought, I need to hit record today. I can't keep Googling. I can't keep researching. If I do not take this inspired messy action, lay her down for her nap, because I like to hold her during naps, I'm going to lay her down. I'm going to hit record. And I'm doing this because I can't come back next year and be in the same spot I was this right now. Because I also had this flash forward moment of like my kids being older and my girls, especially, I have a son and two girls, but it was the girls especially. I don't know. You know, it's just, we're in a male-driven world. So it's the girls especially, where it's like they came home from school and they are going to say, so-and-so said I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. And I know what I'm going to say. I am going to let them know that that is not true. And it just was like, whoa, but you are letting doubt and the lack of, you know, belief and all these things stop you. So that was the day I did it. And I basically just kind of live like that now. And I want to show them that you don't have to do what the world tells you to do. You can create whatever you want. If you love doing something, you can make a job out of it. And that you're allowed to be a mom and work, like communicating that I think helps too. Like a lot of times I can get everything done like when they're at school. That's great. But summer comes and I'm home with them all summer. So communicating with them and saying, mom is working or recording with someone for this hour, and they're at the age now where they can handle an hour on their own in the house with you in a different room, but communicating and letting them know that I'm working, I think is also very healthy for them to know that you're allowed to do both. And if you like being a stay-at-home mom and not working, fantastic. That's the hardest job I think there is. I know that I need my own thing too, and that's allowed too. It can be both and not or not or.
100%. What advice would you have for women who find themselves where you were a few years ago, where you were sort of, I need to hit record right now or I'm never going to do it? What advice would you have for them?
As women, we have this intuition, but it's kind of been beaten out of us by the world to not listen to it. And we really need to come home to ourselves. And all I mean by that is just take a quick pause, ask yourself how you're doing today. What do you like? What lights you up? And then you try to do one thing that day, whether it's tiny or huge or somewhere in between, that honors the true answer to that question. And when you start doing that, you start to notice how you feel about things. That's when you can notice when you do feel inspired. That's when you can notice when you get those little butterflies in your stomach that like you're really excited about, those good butterflies that you're a little nervous, but also like, this is exciting. That's when you follow that, you chase that feeling. And that's the messy, inspired action. I think that is where alignment is for all of us. And the more we can, even if we don't understand like why or really the big picture, because that's a hang up a lot of us have is like, I don't know why I want to start a podcast. There must be something you're going to learn or someone you're going to meet that's going to change your life or open this next door. And so when you lean into that feeling you get of like, I'm excited about this, but nervous, do those things because the alignment is right there.
I love that. Candace Dudley can be found on all socials by the same name. She's a great resource for anyone who's interested in learning more about podcasting or being a guest on a podcast. You can also find her podcast, Better Brave, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can check out her website at CandaceDudley.com. Thank you so much for being here today, Candace. I really appreciate your time and insight.
Oh, I so appreciate you having me. I just love the message that you're giving a voice to.